yeah, a bit of a double whammy there. But yeah, it's just chilling out basically and just enjoying not being super tired. But then 1.5-year-old running around, so I'm sure I'm going to be just as tired anyway. But it's just nice to spend some time with them, switch off, you know, mentally as well, and just, you know, have the odd burger or whatever. But unfortunately, not too many beers. But I find like when you have a little few days like that, you can be super on it again when the time comes and all the way through to the tour then. So
sounds good. Should we get on with the show?
Right, Tom, so it's my turn to choose the subject this week. And thinking of turns, I chose team pursuit, which is where obviously I started my career basically.
Ah, nice. So we're going right back to the start of your professional career, aren't we, really? Beijing, in the La Rochelle Velodrome. That was a crazy place to be. And then London. When you won gold, was that one of the Paul McCartney nights? Or did he save that for the women's team pursuit? He seemed to be singing in every stadium you went to that summer.
Oh, did it? I have absolutely no idea, actually. So if you were there, Sir Paul, sorry, but...
He did Hey Jude. Or he sang along to it.
idea.
He's not singing it live, but they're playing it over the PA.
Oh, were they?
And he was giving it, the Macca thumbs up and waving a few flags.
Yeah, same answer still, absolutely no idea. But, yeah, nothing against Sir Paul. You know, when you're on it, aren't you? In the zone.
Well, it's an Olympic final, to be fair. The thing that always strikes me about the team pursuit is maybe a bit like the Coxless 4 at the rowing at the Olympics. When it's done well, it looks easy. But you're watching and thinking, there's nothing easy about this.
Yeah, so basically team pursuit is 4-kilometre time trial, 16 laps of the track for 4 men or 4 women. And yeah, from A to B as quick as you can go. The time is taken on the third person, so yeah, you only need 3 to finish. But yeah, like you say, Tom, it's beautiful to watch. You know, you all take your turn on the front, you swing up the track in a nice arc, you come back down on the back, and it looks beautiful. When it's almost easier when the quicker you go. But yeah, from the TV, from the stands, it just looks effortless at times when it's done well. But it's anything but, really.
It's become an absolute banker for Britain, hadn't it? Or across the last 3 Olympics, it becomes such a golden go-to. Well, what makes up the perfect team pursuit rider? Like, if we was trying to assemble legs, cardiovascular, head, what sort of person are we putting together?
You know, for the team pursuit, you need that raw sort of power. You need to be explosive, get up to speed really fast, but you also need that endurance to maintain it. It's almost kind of, you need a hybrid of like a 200-metre runner and a 800-metre runner almost.
Almost
okay,
like
you
a
might say
400-metre runner.
Yeah, but a 4, they're just sort of in no man's land, aren't they, really? You need that real explosive 200-metre runner, but then, you know, 100-metre would be Chris Hoy. That's way too explosive. You can't have that. But then, yeah, the back end of the race, 4K is a long way when you're going at 62, 65, whatever they do now, kilometres an hour. So yeah, you need to be explosive. You need to have the endurance to keep going. You need to understand the event. You need to be technically good. I think technique is a massive part of it and riding it well. So when you put all them together, I think you got the perfect rider, and I think our guest reflects all of those points today.
Sports stars. They're like superheroes.
But they're actually real.
Which is why we've made a podcast about them. You see,
They've all got a story.
but too many of these stories were cut short.
Kobe Bryant,
Payne Stewart,
Flojo,
Phil Hughes.
Justin Fashanu,
We're writing episodes about all of them.
and sadly many more.
Death of a Sports Star, a new series from Crowd Network.
So it's time to introduce today's guest. I just gave him the big up. It's Ed Clancy. Welcome, mate.
Hello, everyone.
Thanks for joining us, talking all sorts team pursuit. Well, yeah, as I was just saying, I'd say you are the ultimate team pursuit rider. Would you say?
Well, thank you, Geraint. I don't know about that, you know. It's I do my best, we'll put it that way. But I guess if you're going to judge it on Olympic golds, then yes, we are indeed. So we'll take it.
So how does that break down then, Ed, right? If you were to design the perfect lead-out man, particularly for team pursuit, what are you looking for? What sort of attributes?
You know what? Team pursuit's a funny one. Like, you know, if you're trying to put a team sprint together, for example, basically you just need the biggest, strongest, most powerful blokes you can get hold of, right? Pure fast twitch, pure sprinters. Think Chris Hoy, think Usain Bolt. That's the sort of person you're looking for. Now, in team pursuit, it's a funny one. It's a bit of a middle distance event. So you get guys like myself or Stephen Burke, which are sort of, you know, to sort of dumb it down, let's pretend you're sort of half and half slow twitch, half fast twitch. And then you get guys like Geraint, Sir Brad, that are predominantly slow twitchers, road riders that kind of adapt themselves to team pursuit. So it's a funny one. There is no ideal sort of makeup physically, I wouldn't have said. I think as long as you're up for a fight and you do a bit of specific training, it's hard to rule anybody out.
You got to be quick though, haven't you? There's no way I could step up and do a team pursuit now. I think, as you say, there's specific training and things, but like with you and Stephen Burke, you mentioned, you can do like 101 for a kilo, 1 minute, 1 second from a standing start for 1 kilometre, which is just...
For a kilometre on a track.
Yeah, which is just mad fast.
Yeah, that's the way it's going. I think almost every team pursuiter now could do a 101 or 102 kilo, which to the road riders out there probably means absolutely nothing, but it just means that you've got to be quick, even by sort of road standards.
It's mad. But the one thing I can guess why, but the speed's moved on so much since I stopped, like in 2012, London 2012. Surely, like, these guys suddenly aren't putting out 100 watts more than what we were. Or are they? Or are you?
No, we're not. I just think we were ahead of the game, Geraint. Me and you personally, obviously, but also the Great Britain cycling team as a whole. I think, you know, we were basically, if you look at years gone by, 2000, 2004, I remember looking at the Australian team pursuit. It had like Brad McGee and the sort of road stars in it, and they were good, but I think the recipe back then was try and amass as many good road riders as you could from the same nation, stick them on a track, get them somewhat aero, and off you go. And I think for a long, long time, you know, that was good enough to go get an Olympic medal or even a world championship or Olympic gold medal. But now the game's moved on.
Team pursuit is the best event though on the track, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the blue ribbon event.
It is, Geraint. That's a good observation. I think it is. You know, from a lot of points of view, it's a beautiful thing. You know, when you get it right, it's like a big house of cards, and everyone's propping up everyone. And there's no such thing as like a team pursuiter anymore. You're a man one team pursuiter, or man two, or three, or four, and everyone brings something different to the party. And the way the sort of turns and the strategy of the event stacks up, it's like if one person's having a bad day, the whole thing is just a catastrophe. And you ain't even talking about a top 10 anymore. It's certainly out of the medals. So I don't think there's, many sports that kind of everyone's so heavily reliant on everybody else doing a good job.
That's the hardest bit of it as well, isn't it? Like when you mention man 1, 2, 3, 4, man 1 and man 2 are the power, the fast twitch guys, get up to speed really quickly, and then 3 and 4 generally are the more endurance guys, and they do the longer turns at the end of the race. And to get that balance between 4 guys is super hard, isn't it? Really, it takes a lot of training together and a lot of drills and everything. No?
Yeah, big time. I think it's fair to say, but particularly in the early days, Geraint, when you were around, we started making it look easy. But I think the thing about team pursuit is that I think a lot of people don't get, like, even your parents and your mum, like, when she's watching you on TV at the Olympics, is you don't just rock up and put together one of the world's greatest team pursuits. It's I guess it's the idea that excellence is a habit and not an act. It's like you win the team pursuit weeks and months and years in advance, really, just kind of like everyone chipping away at their own goals, and then you kind of like you put it together on the track, and then you move away and you do your things on the road, and then certain guys go off and ride on the pro sort of scene on the road, other people go do the crits, other people sit in the gym, and then you sort of bring it back together on the track, and then you take it apart. And yeah, there's a lot of goings on behind the scenes, and yeah, it brings us back around to our starting point that team pursuit is indeed the best track event in the world.
Yeah, I remember back in the, you're talking about training and all the hard yards. Remember those days in November prior to, obviously, the following summer where the Olympics were, but some of those drills we were doing, there was this one training session which I absolutely loved and Ed absolutely hated, and it was basically really rubbish, like, equipment, really slow wheels, tiny gear, and we'd have to do like 5k at a certain speed, and we'd do about 5 or 6 of them, wouldn't we, with not very much rest, and Ed would just be on the limit from the first effort, basically.
Oh, I just hated it, yeah. Hated it, man.
I absolutely loved them. Because then the next day we would do these stand-in starts, like over geared then, so massive gear, stand-in starts, like only like half a lap. Oh, it'd take me an eternity to get round, and Ed would just be rolling round on the inside of the track, just laughing at me as I'm going past. Like I'm barely going past him.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I guess it's just a good example, innit, of horses for courses. And those rolling 5Ks, G. I used to hate them. It got to the point I didn't even bother having breakfast because I knew I'd puke it up. Yes, Steve Cummins as well. It was like you and Steve Cummins would just roll around taking the piss, and I just hated them. To me, it just wasn't team pursuit, We'd just have terrible equipment on, a terrible small gear, and if it wasn't for Shane giving me a bollocking at the side of the track, I probably wouldn't have got out of bed to do them.
They were good, though, when you look back, like, because when you're on the limit, it was all about being on the limit and still having to make the right decisions, which I'm sure we'll get into, but, doing shorter turns or longer turns or making sure you get your actual change right. And when you change from the front to the back of the group, and I think that's where you sort of really learned how to team pursuit properly, no?
Yeah, I think so. You sort of alluded to it a bit there, but I think an awful lot about team pursuit is making decisions under pressure, and you do a lot of training, as we've sort of talked about, and you gather a lot of data and evidence, and the smartest people, well, supposedly the smartest people in the world sort of come together, and you build a strategy, and everyone's got a certain turn length, and that's your plan A. But I'd say 7 times out of 10, it doesn't go to plan, and you're just a biological thing. Some people have better days, some people have worse days, and it's highly unusual to all get to race day and for everyone to deliver what the scientists claim that you're going to have. So inevitably, there's decisions to be made. There's different lengths of turns. Do you go half a lap longer? Do you go half a lap shorter? And it doesn't just impact on you and your turn. It ultimately affects other people's rest periods and how far they can go. And it's almost like a bit of a game of chess while you're going absolutely flat out.
Right, I want to ask a question of you two. It's quite a basic one, but you told me once, Geraint, that Ed, if he's doing the first lap, he doesn't go flat out on the first lap. He doesn't go as fast as he could because it would be too fast for the rest of you. Is that right?
Oh, 100%. So basically, the best starter generally would go first, so that would be Ed, because he can soak up that work. Plus, you have to go to a set time. So on whatever gear we're using, Ed could potentially do a lap in, I'm going to make a number up now because I can't remember, it was so long ago, but he could potentially do a lap in 17 seconds on that gear, whereas in the race he probably only has to go through in 18.5. So Ed could go a lot quicker, but then if he did go quicker, he'd just kill all of us as well. So we'd all be on the limit by the time we got to halfway, and it'd just be terrible.
I think I'd rather be Ed in this scenario because Ed, you get that sort of feeling of this is easy, whereas G and the others are desperately hanging on. You know what it's like? It's much nicer to be chased than to do the chasing, isn't it? Like you're laying down the pace for the rest of them.
I guess so. When you watch Team Pursuit on TV, it's kind of easy to imagine that there's just sort of 4 guys that get real sort of hyped up, and they sort of bang their chests. They get on the start line and they go absolutely flat out from the first rev to the last. But to execute the best team pursuit you've got is a bit like walking a tightrope. When I got to hit that first lap split at a 12.3, that means a 12.3, not a 12.2 or a 12.4. It's a 12.3, and then the next split's a 7.8, and then it's a 7.2, and then you're consistently knocking out lap splits of 13.8, 13.8, 13.8, 13.8, and if you're 13.7, it's easy to think that's a good thing, but like I said, you've done a lot of data gathering in training, and you kind of know that if you go a tenth or two too quick early on, that's going to bite you in the ass later on, and you're going to pay for that and more. So it's a little bit like walking there's so much feel and sort of pace judgment involved in the first half. It's different when you get to your last turn, because, you know, it's just sort of teeth out, everyone's going flat out at that point. But, you know, really for the first 2 or 3k, don't get me wrong, you're trying hard and you're going for it, but there's always that element of sort of, you know, feel and control. And it's not about doing the first 2 kilometres as fast as you can, or even the first 3 or 3.5 kilometres as fast as you can. You know, the team that wins is the one that gets to 4k faster than the rest. And I don't know if you ever saw the Olympic final from Rio. It was a great example of that. You know, unfortunately Geraint wasn't there, but you'd have loved it, G-Man. It was an absolute fight to end all fights, you know. From the first lap to say like 3.5 kilometres in, we were losing. You know, we were behind the Australians. They clearly went out to put pressure on us, and that's exactly what they did. And, you know, they made mistakes, we made mistakes. It was scrappy, you know, both teams were scrappy, and it was a great example of how not to do a team pursuit. And I mean, like, we all honestly thought we were going to lose that, but it all just changed around the last 2 laps, you know. Just those guys going just a tiny bit too fast early on sort of bit them, and yeah, that was the difference, I think.
Yeah, Ed, I was going to say, that reminds me, well, that's 2 things actually. First thing, Paul Manning, who me and Ed rode with in Beijing, Tom, when we won gold medal, he always used to tell, well, mainly me really, and Ed, but don't go chasing the pain, it'll come, you know, because it's easy to just, like Ed was saying, get on the front and just go 100%, and before you know it, you're gone, you're out the arse, and, you know, there's still four laps to go. So that's the main thing with team pursuit, is the control. But what I was going to ask then as well, talking about Rio, because when I used to race, we never really used to look at the other team. So did you know that, like, were you walking the Aussies? Like, because generally, Tom, if the guy on the side of the track, he's standing on the finish line, if he walks towards you...
Your coach,
yeah. If he walks towards you 1 pace, that's 1/10 down. If he walks away from you, like from the line, that's 1/10 up. So that's how you know the speed you go in. And generally, you've done so much training by then, you know how it feels anyway, the cadence. So in Rio, Ed, obviously you can't see the other team if it's close, because you literally have to look the other side of the track, which is a bit dodgy. Was the coach walking your pace, or was he like showing you how far down you were on the Aussies?
This is a good question. The coach, as always, was walking our pace, and in theory, that's the right thing to do. However, pretty much straight away, but certainly after a kilometre or 2, I knew that A, we were way up on our pace. Every time we'd seen the coach, we knew we were doing well. We were 2/10 up, 3/10 up every lap. But B, I also knew we were losing and the Australians were doing something special. I knew that because every time we went past the British section of the crowd, it was deathly silent, not a peep. So I had a funny, like I said, I knew we were down, but I also knew we were way up on our schedule. And, you know, when you kind of put 2 and 2 together, you can be pretty sure that the other team's going to park pretty badly later on, and they're going to suffer for that start being whatever they were, 2 or 3 seconds up on world record pace. But
it's hard to think that, though, when the balls are on the line, it's Olympic final, and you're suffering, and you're thinking, geez, we've gone fast, and these guys are even going quicker.
You know what? These are one of them times that, like, the old sort of wise words of Steve Peters comes to save you. It's like everything about you wants to just panic and smash the pedals as hard as you can. But there's that sort of voice of reason sort of saying, you know what, let's not let your emotions get the best of your intelligence. You know, it's all right to be 2/10 up on pace, but no more.
Yeah.
And they'll crack eventually.
Yeah. I was going to say, yeah, you're already 2/10 up. You don't want to be going any quicker. Because basically the coach as well, he must have been walking the quickest time you could do, no?
Yeah.
He wouldn't have been conservative.
No. The days of sort of Beijing and things like that, winning by 3 or 4 seconds, G-Man had gone by then. And, you know, we knew we were up for a scrap with the Aussies in the final, no matter what. And we knew from qualifying the semi-finals, I guess our perceived effort, following the semi-finals just a couple of hours prior, that we didn't have an awful lot more in the tank as a team. And, we knew we were up on, you know, what the masterminds had deciphered. This is the fastest way to go from A and B, and we were up on that. So we were already pushing our luck. So yeah, it was critical that we didn't panic and go full throttle 2k in.
So how do you work out the length of turns then? Let's say you've got a set idea before it all goes crazy and it all changes. Let's take that your lineup from the 2012 Olympics. So it's you two and it's Pete Kennock and it's Stephen Burke. What was the plan at the start of that and what's it based on?
It sounds boring.
I can't even remember the plan.
Yeah, I remember my plan was, I think I had a lap and 3/4 start, a lap, and then a lap and a half. So those were my turns. I'm guessing, Geraint, you'd had food poisoning or something. Geraint had saved his worst ever form for the Olympic final, his home Olympic final. So I can't remember what your strategy was, Geraint, but I remember near the end of the final.
Just try and finish.
Yeah. No, it's in all seriousness, you were in quite a bad way, and I remember rooming with you that week. Bearing in mind this is your home Olympic final, and Geraint's usually quite a positive bloke, and he's always fairly confident no matter what what he's thinking and feeling, and what the results would suggest. But yeah, that week he was unusually quiet, and I knew he was in a bad way. But to answer your question, Tom, it didn't go to plan. I think between Geraint and Pete, we probably lost a lap of distance, and usually it sort of falls on man one because you start first. Everyone's done their sort of 3 structured turns at that point, and unluckily for me, I got to stick my nose in the wind for a 4th time and just rock around to the finish. But we had enough of a gap that it didn't matter at the time. But yeah, it was a fortunate situation, I guess.
Yeah, Tom, as Ed said earlier about everyone sort of a house of cards, it's that thing, I wasn't 100%. Suddenly I was supposed to do a lap and a half and I only did a lap, so that meant Ed's expecting to do 3 turns. Suddenly he hits the front for a 4th time and he's already, completely spent. He's given his 100%, and now he's back on the front again, and that's when the team pursuit is savage, really. There's no hiding, is there, at all, really?
Oh, it's a terrible place to be. When you sort of hit the front for an unscheduled turn. I mean, in that instance, in London 2012, we kind of got away with it. I think we were sort of close enough to the team in front that we had a decent draft, and to be honest, I felt unusually good that week. But there's been plenty of times I've hit the front for an unscheduled turn, like the Holden World Championships of 2016, and lost it for everyone. It does happen.
I remember when I lost it for the team as well. My very first team pursuit, I think it was in Bordeaux.
Is 2006.
Yeah, and I was actually in 3rd position, man 3, which technically really should have been 4, so I had a bit more of time to get into the race, and sort of, when you're man 4, you're on the back a lot longer before your first turn, so you kind of feel it a bit and you kind of get into it, and it's easier to sort of judge, I guess. But anyway, I was 3, and I did my last turn with 3/4 of a lap to go, changed, and somebody had bailed, so we were down to 3 guys, and I knew, but you train so much for 4 guys, and then suddenly you swung up and I was like, oh man, I knew straight away that I'd gone too high, and so I dived back down to the bottom of the track, and there was a bike length between me and the guy in front of me, so I didn't land right on the wheel, where obviously this the easiest because there's no wind, and I was just for 3/4 of a lap just chasing, just could not close this gap. It didn't get any bigger than a bike length, but I just stayed there all the way through to the finish, and we lost by 0.004 of a second, which obviously if I was on the wheel, if I was that bike length further up the track, we would have won a gold medal at the World. So yeah, we've all been there, Ed.
You can't communicate with each other either, can you? At that point, you can't shout at each other. So if one of you's, let's say you're having a bad time of it and you can only do, I don't know, 3/4 of a lap or a half lap rather than a lap, does everyone else just have to guess? Is it just when you swing up the track early, is that just a complete shock to everyone else?
Yeah, it is you'd like it to be a shock because you don't want the speed to change. Basically, a team pursuit is you want to hit, for argument's sake, 60k an hour, and it needs to be 60k an hour from once you get to that speed all the way through to the finish. So if you are struggling and you're supposed to do a lap and a half and you do a lap, as long as it stays at 60, fine, that's perfect. But if you go to do a lap and a half and the speed drops to 58, to get it back up is just so hard, and the knock-on effect to the team then is massive. So yeah, if somebody's really tying up on the front, it's just change, get out of there, swing off the front. Generally they probably know, but you just shout change just to reinforce the fact that yeah, you are going slower than you should do, mate, and just get out of there. The only time you actually communicate is when you go down to 3, and then suddenly the guy who's actually bailing, who's not going to get back in the race, he'll shout 3 as loud as he can. Look at the guys just like 3, you know, like as you're swinging up the track. The coach will be shouting 3 probably. Even in the line, then you shout to each other 3, 3, 3, and hopefully everyone knows. But sometimes in something like a team pursuit final, the noise has just been insane, really, and it is hard. There's hold, which is basically to stop someone accelerating. We thought slow was probably a bit too negative and you might actually slow down too much. So hold is just, stop accelerating. Squeeze, which, obvious reasons, is more of a squeeze rather than up. Because someone like Ed or Berkey, who are naturally punchy and fast twitch, they could just a couple of revolutions and it's up 1 kilometre an hour. So
like I was shouting at you in the final in Beijing when you just hit the front and just had this amount. I don't know what you're doing for the first 3.5k. It was like, you know, you just sort of blended in nicely. The last 2 laps, the G-man at the front and just rode me off the wheel. So I was shouting, like, you know, if I'd have lost the wheel properly, as soon as you're in the wind, you're just like a kite, you know, after your last turn. So I was screaming, hold. He didn't listen, but
that's definitely my favourite. That's my favourite team pursuit ever. I felt so good that last turn. I felt like I felt so fresh. We could see the Danes. It was Olympic final in Beijing, first Olympics. Could see the Danes, and I was like, right, I'm coming for you. And even if I ride Ed off the wheel, it doesn't matter because we're that far up. We're not going to lose.
Cheers, G-man.
I'm going to make Ed suffer here, and just went. Oh, it was great.
Do you remember the team meeting we had with Shane right before we got on the bikes?
I think I do, yeah.
I remember. I'll tell this story then. So we were all sat down there, and we had a decent margin over the Danes. You know, it's our first Olympic gold medal, and you know, Shane had done the maths, and he was like, right, if you do a 14-0, that'll get you the win. So, you know, we do the 14-0s, and we're all sat in our circle, and we're sort of like nodding agreement. Paul Manning says, yep, sounds like a sensible idea. I'm like, yep, let's do that. And Brad was like, yeah, 14-0 sounds all right. And then G's just like, yeah. And anyway, Shane walks off. 2 seconds later, G looks at the group and says, nah, we'll do 13-8s. So, and that was it. Nobody agreed with him, but yeah, that's what we did. And
we did it though, didn't we?
Yes, yeah, we did. Yeah. There's nothing like taking a massive unnecessary risk in your first Olympic final.
How hard is it to when you're talking about swinging up, G, and swinging back onto someone's wheel? How hard is that to do? Because from the outside, when the team pursuit looks beautiful, those are the moments when it looks like almost like a mad Victorian clockwork toy. Because you're all identically dressed, and it looks like...
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It just the way you go whoop up and then whoop back down. It almost looks like you're not in control of it, like you're just some other force is putting you on someone's wheel.
It is almost, as Steve Peters would say, it's like your computer, your automatic sort of autopilot takes over almost because you've done it so much. The main thing is, as we'd always say, is keep the pressure on. Like, just because you swing off doesn't mean you stop pedaling. You still want to be putting out the same power as when you're on the front, really, and then up the track, and then you dive back down, and you know, because that arc gives the team time to ride underneath you, and then boom, you plant yourself on that back wheel. And I think it's just repeating it and doing it so often that it just does become just second nature like that.
It's funny, almost like you get like a sixth sense. You spend so much time with the guys, you can almost sort of preempt when someone's going to tie up a little bit when they're going into the turn, and little things like I remember when Brad was tired. It didn't happen very often, but when Brad was tired, he'd aim for the black line down the straights. And when Geraint was tired, he used to shuffle back in his chair. And when Berkey was tired, he used to sort of like zigzag a little bit down the straights. And yeah, you almost get to the point where, you know, at that point in the race, there's no point in shouting squeeze or anything like that at them, because you know they're going flat out. But like Geraint said, I think it just comes from an automatic part of your brain eventually, yeah.
Oh, Ed, that reminds me, actually. Remember London World Cup 2012?
Yep.
It must have been February, before the Olympics. And, yeah, Berkey did that same thing. Parked up, pulled the parachute, handbrake, whatever you want to call it. Suddenly just slowed up right in front of us. And when you're that far from the wheel in front, you're kind of either slightly above or slightly below. If you're slightly above, you're kind of okay because you can go right. You've got the whole track to sort of scrub your speed off, really. you go a long way around the track, all this. If you go underneath, it's very limited space because you're already on the black line. You're almost off the track. You can't go off the track. You need the banking to get around. So, knowing my luck, I was slightly on the left. I tried to kick back, basically meaning you put a bit of backwards pressure on a track bike, because if the back wheel's going round, your pedals are going round on a track bike. So instead of pedaling normally, you kind of put a bit of back pressure and that slows you down. Anyway, I'm frantically trying to scrub some speed off, kick back a bit. End up hitting Pete, who's in front of me. So my front wheel is leaning on his back wheel. All my body weight's going right. And basically, I just need to get my front wheel out. Otherwise, I'm just going to fall over the top of his bike, basically. Managed to free myself, just about. But then obviously my body weight, my angle of my body, everything's leaning right. It basically slingshots me right up to the top of the track. I can high-five the guys in the front row of the stand. We come round into the home straight. I'm the top of the track. Berkey, who obviously is just tied up, he's got nothing left. He's swung out like the start of the straight, which very rarely happens anyway. He's middle of the track, and then you got Pete on the black line, a bike length gap, and then Ed. So if you're in the stand, you must be thinking, what the hell is going on here? Like, bodies everywhere. Anyway, by the time we get into the next banking, I've come down the track, back onto Ed's wheel. Ed's closed that gap to Pete, and the three of us are back in formation, and as if nothing went wrong, basically. But safe to say, we didn't win. We were second by quite a fair margin, but that's what gave us a kick up the arse in the run into the Olympics.
It was just absolute carnage. That whole ride, I remember it was such a shambles at that home World Cup. And yeah, honestly, he must have been at 45 degrees when Geraint just sort of like, I could smell it before I could even see what was going on. Geraint must have been rubbing Berkey's wheel, like you said, from sort of mid-banking all the way down the straight. And then, you know, there's that point where like your weight's on the right-hand side of your bike, and to sort of correct it, you need to turn right. But obviously he couldn't because he was stuck on the left of him. And then he sort of projected out to the right-hand side with such velocity, I was 100% sure he was going to be sitting in the stands next time I came round. But, yes.
I thought I was as well, to be fair. Oh.
Yeah. Somehow we finished it.
I'll have to show you the picture, Tom.
Oh, we can stick that on the Instagram feed as well, can't we, for the show?
For sure, yeah.
So do you have to get on with everyone in a team pursuit? Because you two are very tight. I remember you telling me, G, that in 2012 you spent more time in the same bedroom with Ed as you did with Sa, your wife to be. But do you have to all get on? Can you ride a really good team pursuit if there's one idiot and everyone else hates that one rider, if they're an amazing, powerful rider?
I don't think you do have to get on. It certainly helps a lot because, like you say, you spend so much time with each other. You just hope you're not rooming with that guy. But I think we have been lucky that generally we do all get on. There's obviously the odd sort of spat and stuff, but I think it's healthy to just get it out as well. But yeah, there's never been a massive sort of rift in the team or anything. There's obviously the biggest thing, I guess, Ed, is when it comes to selection and it ends up, everyone knows, you know when you're riding around, you're doing all the training, you know who it's between. There's like, oh, it's this guy and that guy. It was never me and Ed because we were always in the team. But
yeah.
But
those were the days.
Yeah, that's when the biggest.
Who was it in 2012? Was it Andy Tennant in 2012? Was he the next man? Would he be the next man on?
Yeah, he was fifth man in 2012 and in 2016, yeah.
That's hard because he doesn't get to go on the podium. He's done all the training.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to speak to Andy about it, but for sure, it was a hit for him at the time, and particularly in 2012, because I mean, in 2016 he was a little bit removed from the situation. He was the fifth man, but essentially, because the team numbers had been cut back by that point, he never actually travelled to the event. So he was there in Newport with us. He got the suitcase, got the jersey, and then sort of went home, and that was that. But in 2012, he literally had to go, warm up in the pits next to me, Geraint, Pete, and Berkey, and we're still good friends. Essentially, had to go watch four of his best mates go win an Olympic gold medal in front of a home crowd, and he put on a brave face, and he was a good teammate through all of it. But man, he won't. I'm sure it's not the easiest place to be.
And the thing is, you need five guys. 100% you need five guys, like in training, because someone's always up with someone, and just to do all the efforts that everyone needs. You need that extra guy. Plus, if for me, for instance, if whatever I got before London had developed further and had become worse, then Andy for sure would have had to step up into the team. So it's just tough when that guy goes through all those final sort of preparation and doesn't get a ride. But that's professional sport, really, isn't it? And it's cutthroat at times.
So there's one thing we've got to talk about. It's one thing that I've always wondered. So this is, and this always gets talked about with team pursuit, with track cycling at an Olympics, and that's equipment. So if I give you a theoretical situation, if your GB quartet in Beijing and in London had the kit of the French team, and the French team had the GB kit, who's winning?
Oh, we are every time.
Yeah?
Yeah, because...
What about if the Aussies had your kit and you had the Aussie kit?
We'd beat them. Well, I don't know. I'm getting a bit bullish now. But I think the thing is, in Melbourne World Championships, which were March before London 2012, we went there with our standard kit. Or not even, it was just terrible kit, no, Ed? It was our training skin suits. We had helmets that even had little cracks in them. They had, like, air vents in them. They were just bog standard kit. And the Aussies had their full Olympic kit out. And we ended up winning that World Championships by, I think, less than a tenth of a second. And that's where we won the Olympics. We won them back in March on that day for sure, because they knew as well. They knew we had all this fast kit to come, and they had their best stuff, and we put them away in their own backyard. Hisense Arena in Melbourne. And that's what they always used to ask us, didn't they, Ed? We were out on the road. Yeah. Hey, boys, are you racing the Hisense Arena?
We had no idea what it meant, but yeah.
Aussie.
Yeah.
And, put them away. And I think, I honestly believe that's where we won the Olympics that day.
Yeah, I agree. I think, certainly in Beijing and London, I think we were the best team, irrelevant of kit. And I definitely think it's fair to say that GB had a head start on all that stuff, but I don't think that advantage exists whatsoever these days.
Ed, that's been fantastic. I can see why Geraint wanted you as his roommate. I was going to ask you for some stories from his stag do, but we'll save those for another time because I'm sure some of those aren't suitable for a family podcast.
Ed didn't even come on it.
Yeah.
That's how such a good mate he is. Yeah, on that bombshell.
Hey, I was there at your wedding.
Real end.
I did the real work.
The wedding when he cried all the time.
That's the one, yeah. He did some good rapping, though, at the end. What was that song you were rapping away with Zara?
She was rapping. I was doing Rihanna bit.
Yeah, Eminem and Rihanna. What's it called? The name of that song? Love the way you lie. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good night.
It wasn't even planned, that was it, G? It was just freestyled.
No.
Of course, by then
that's how we roll, innit?
We were very, very drunk. Yeah.
Cheers, Ed.
Aye.
Tom, I've got one very important question for you here about Zwift. Have you been wearing your GTCC jersey in game?
Have I ever? We've not waited all these months, all these weeks for me then to stick with the usual one. And I think, G, I've got to say, even as someone who had a very, very, very small hand in its development, it looks quite the part.
It does. Fair play.
So if you fancy giving Zwift a go and getting your hands on our virtual GTCC jersey, just go to Zwift.com to start your free trial. And also you can join our club ride every Wednesday at 6 p.m. in your brand new jersey. Everyone's welcome. So, G, we like to give all club members of the GTCC a proper look at what really goes on in the pro world. But we also like to try and pull a few tips, don't we, out of our particular topic. Something that we can all learn from, those of us who just ride at weekends or ride for fun, things we can learn. So what are the lessons from a team pursuit?
I think, to be honest, it's probably harder as an amateur club to get a good team pursuit together than it is at the top of a Olympics, because everyone there is at the same sort of level, whereas in an amateur team it can be such a vast difference in ability. So no egos, leave your egos at the door. That's the biggest thing I could say. And it's all about speed. You just want to try to figure out the optimum speed basically for your third guy, realistically, because he's the one that, or she is the one that the time's going to be on. You just want to ride at that pace. So if you can ride that pace for 6 laps, do that. If you can ride that pace for half a lap, do that. So It's all about speed and momentum and no egos. But it's technically pretty hard to do. Have you ever done one, Tom?
No, I have ridden the velodrome, but I haven't done. I was trying to do fastest lap and stuff like that. I've never done a team pursuit. I'm pretty sure it would end in carnage the first time.
Yeah, I think it would.
I think there'd be a lot of shouting, "Go off my wheel!"
Never know. Maybe the GTCC could have a team pursuit team at some point.
Oh, now we're talking.
That would be interesting.
Listen. If it's you and me, don't expect any turns because I'm going to be sitting on your wheel probably for the first lap before you drop me, and then when you lap me, I'll try and get back on your wheel briefly.
Well, to be fair, that probably would be the quickest way. You just get on my wheel and I'll just do 16 laps and then we'll finish.
Yeah, and I'll just keep shouting.
Let's be honest, as
"Hold!"
soon as I swing up, we're going to swing down. We're going to slow down.
Yeah, we are, yeah.
Tom, so is that time again? Any other business? There's not that many left in Series 1 now, but surely there's a few more committee positions available.
Yeah, very much so. We've got an application here for our regional social secretary. Jake Down wants to put his name forward for the Dutch or Amsterdam representative. Jake's a keen amateur rider, and get this, G, he wants to show us around Amsterdam cycle routes, or it's bars. Apparently it's our choice.
Oh, nice.
What do you reckon, cycle route or bar?
Well, let's be honest, I'm not going to go there to train, so it's going to have to be bars, isn't it? But I have been to Amsterdam once, actually, with Saar. Mate, it's mental, the roads, like, let alone the bars and stuff. But, you know, because there's all the cycle lanes, so you're crossing the road, and obviously if you're from the UK, it's the other way. Fortunately, I was kind of used to that anyway, living abroad. But, yeah, then you got this cycle path where, you know, the bikes take priority over everything, I think. And then there's trams and, oh, mate, especially if you're a bit, like, hungover, it is lethal. Absolutely lethal.
I agree.
But I like that. I like that idea. Because as we all know as well, bars in Amsterdam, you can quite easily, go into somewhere you think's a bar and it's not a bar. But, you know, it's all an experience, isn't it?
Next up, we've got Matt Hickman, who would like to be our honorary physiologist. He's doing a sports and exercise physiology masters at St Mary's University, and he's also a keen triathlete. He says, perhaps I could make some training suggestions or help answer some questions.
Yeah, I think that's great, Matt. Just go onto the GTCC Facebook group, maybe set up a thread and go from there.
Yeah, like it. On another note, Ed Fenton has got in touch to say he's found the perfect vintage road bike for our highly anticipated head-to-head race in the south of France, G, where I get your or Richie Port's Pinarello and you get some old bike. Now, Ed has sent us a photo of this. It's actually far too nice a bike for, I think, what I need to make this challenge fair. It's a 1982 Peugeot PH12, which, I'm told, was one of the first road bikes to feature integrated tube cabling. Ed says it's aerodynamic tubing, but made of steel, so nice and heavy for G. Also got very fetching pink bar tape. Now, that's all great. I don't like the idea of aerodynamic tubing for you. I don't like the idea of integrated tube cabling. What I would like is brakes made of cork. You can have gears, but it's the sort of gear they had in 1912 where you have to take the other sprocket and a spanner and change it yourself if you actually want to change gear.
That's full on, that is. But that sounds very nice bike, actually. I did have a quick Google then. It looks lovely. So, yeah, maybe I could wear my Tom Simpson's Peugeot National Champs jersey while riding it. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Can't turn that down, can we?
No. How fat can you get before this challenge, by the way?
Well, it depends when it is, really. So if it's October, yeah, pretty fat by then, mate.
October the 31st it is. And finally, Bruce Haxton's got in touch from the mountains of Chiang Mai. Wow, that's in Thailand, isn't it? He says, next month I'm heading out on a 2,300-kilometre solo ride in 20 days to raise funds to feed elephants up here in the mountains who are struggling without tourism. My question to Geraint is this: how best to avoid pain? It's super hot out here at the moment, 38 to 40 degrees centigrade, and saddle sores are never far away.
Yeah, I think it's not really the pain you want to worry about, it's the temperatures there. Like, I think the main thing is you want to be hydrated, drink, and just keep drinking, basically. start fully hydrated, obviously. That's key. And then, yeah, drink as much as you can on the bike, because 38, 40 degrees, especially if it's humid, you know, it's the worst conditions. So drink as much as you can. And, yeah, hopefully you got a lot of support out there with you to keep feeding you then. But saddle sores and stuff, like I say, it's the least of your worries if you're dehydrated and, you know, curling over the handlebars anyway. But, yeah, good on you. Enjoy. And good luck.
There is obviously, I suppose, the option of chamois cream. You can use chamois cream, maybe at the start of a ride on your chamois to help keep saddle sores at bay. And then some old pros would tell you that there is a certain cream that some people have in their medicine cabinets anyway, which helps with saddle sores. And there's no nice way of putting this, but if you do struggle with hemorrhoids, then apparently exactly the same cream works on saddle sores.
Really? I didn't know that.
Obviously, I've got no personal experience with this. I've just been told by people that my work.
Oh, okay. Of hemorrhoids or of saddle sores? Both.
We'll see you next week. That was the Geraint Thomas Cycling Club. Thanks to our Amsterdam social secretary, Jake Down, and our honorary physiologist, Matt Hickman. Thanks to our head of social media, Fionn Clark, our head of music, Emma Hickman, our treasurer, Diane Barker, and our honorary president, Mike Carr. And of course, as always, most of all, to you, our fellow members, for listening. We'll see you next time.
Crowd Network, a place where you belong.